following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana Kersner, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health, using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, I get to interview someone who's not a therapist either. Machan Taylor has had a lengthy career in the music industry, and she has a book out about her experiences, and a big part of the book, you'll meet Machan after the break, is about identity and performance. And setting Machan up is a challenge, because what's wonderful about the book is it's not one thing. It's messy, it's beautiful, and that is the best way to describe human identity. And so anything too structured as a setup, I don't think is going to be true to Machan and what her book does and what her work does. And so I'm going to try it to be a bit messy myself. Not that I'm not that I am super clean on the best of shows, but identity is both external, what the world pushes on you, the expectations, societal structures, as well as who you truly are, your values, your innate personality, that kind of nature versus nurture dichotomy that makes things complicated before we add other, I shall say, points of flux, right? Identity, I'm not the same person I was a year ago, 2 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. And you get older, you get wiser, you make mistakes, you decide that what you used to want isn't what you want anymore. We know that personality is not fixed, which is a relatively new revelation in psychology. People used to believe that the big 5 traits change very little throughout one's life. We know that's not true. I was a very shy person when I was a kid. I am still very introverted, but obviously I talk to you guys most weeks. You know, can't really do that if you're actively shy. So identity does change. It's a moving target. And yet, we live in an age where labels try to stick us down, try to pin us down. We have to declare who we are. And every time we put a label on ourselves, the world decides what that means. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride, but LGBTQ, even if you say that, people are like, oh, you're an alphabet, right? With all the pejoratives that come with LGBTQ plus activism, even the alphabet that you use, because the LGBTQ2IA, I can't get that one. And I'd love to be Indigenous inclusive, but when you're saying it, I fumble it too much. And so people assume certain things about me that aren't just that I tend to get tongue-tied. And there are even more labels. Our jobs, our Myers-Briggs personality. I am an INTJ leaning INFJ, and I used to be turbulent, but now I am whatever the A stands for, assertive. I forget. Anyway, these are just, preferred ways of working. It has nothing to do with personality. We get into type A, type B personalities. With personality disorders, we get into clusters. And if we're not careful, these labels can take us too far into those external pressures and take us away from who we truly are inside. And who we truly are inside fluctuates daily, right? Some days we feel really great. Sometimes we feel lousy. Confidence ebbs and flows, right? How much we like certain aspects of ourselves fluctuates. And, we can love ourselves and not terribly like certain realities of our life on a given day. And Machan Taylor talks in her book about the reality of being Japanese American. And that is a uniquely challenging identity. All identities are uniquely challenging. When I say uniquely challenging, people go, oh, you're saying it's more challenging. No, uniquely challenging does not mean more challenging. This is not a pyramid. Think of it as a Venn diagram. The idea of being racialized, yes, everybody can sort of go, when you're not white, that matters. But the challenge for a Japanese American is different than even a Chinese American or Laotian American or Vietnamese American. We separate South Asian from Asian here in Canada. In the UK, what we would call South Asians are called Asian people. Identity is not simple. And the more we try to make it simple, the more we risk cracking the foundations of our understanding of ourselves and our ability to discover ourselves. And this is why I thought Machan Taylor, as an artist, is uniquely interesting to have on to talk about her experiences after the break, identity, the mess, and the beauty, and the art that comes out of it. Questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for a topic yourself. If you want to be on the show yourself, just as a person, that's great. You don't have to be a therapist. There's a reason the show is called It's Not Therapy. Liana at nottherapyshow.com, at nottherapyshow on social media. Identity, the mess and the beauty. Machan Taylor, after the break. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are in the interview. And before we started, I spent far too much time fangirling my guest this week. Machan Taylor is here to talk about her book, Naked Out Loud, From Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond. Machan she's a singer, songwriter, educator, and author whose career took her to the highest levels of the music industry. She's performed with, I hope this is all right, Machan, Pink Floyd, Sting, Foreigner, Pat Benatar, George Benson, Michael Jackson. You performed with all those artists.
I performed with everyone except Michael Jackson. I was actually working in a production role in that particular job.
You were there, but as somebody who wears multiple hats. But thank you for coming on the show. Congratulations on Naked Out Loud. It is a wonderfully written as well as a powerful story of...
Thank you.
To me, it's identity and performance. So why did you write this book? Why did you decide to just go for it? Go raw, go earnest, just go.
It's a good question because I wasn't really planning on writing a book. Along the lines, a few friends said, "Oh, you have such an interesting story. You should write a book." And I thought, who's going to care? And, it's a lot of work and blah, blah, blah. And then I just started journaling, several years ago. I just started writing down stories and I kept revisiting the process. And one thing led to another. And all of a sudden I had over 60,000 words written and all these different chapters. And I said, oh my God, I have enough for a book.
Yeah.
So it really was not a planned thing. It just really evolved. And I found that the whole process became very cathartic. Mm-hmm. And I just kept digging deeper and looking behind the scenes of my career. And that really I was just led by whether it's divine intervention or whatever you want to call it. I was just led to talk about my personal story underneath and behind my career and what was going on in my life on the surface.
Yeah, I mean, this book's got everything. It's got historical documents. It's got wonderful photos of your life in Japan and then, beyond. And you talk both about the challenges with identity, but also the the very it giveth, it taketh away reality of performance, right?
Yes.
How do you, I mean, you talk a lot about it in the book. How do you see the two link with you right now compared to how you journal about your earlier years? How do you go, this is Machan the performer, this is Machan the person?
Well, hindsight is 2020 always, right? So, I'm about to turn 70 this year, in September, and when you're lucky enough to live to be an older age, you have the opportunity to look back and also to have done a lot of work on myself. Even though you're not a therapist, I'm sure you understand about these issues. And I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of work on
Mm.
myself over the years. And so, it's like when I was young, it's as if I two different parts of me traveled parallel paths. There was the outer part of me, my career, my persona, all that stuff that was happening on the surface, and then there was my internal life. But now at this point, I've joined those two aspects,
Hmm.
and and that's what sort of came out in the book was a summation and also assimilation of all these different parts of myself and all the work that I've done. And so now I feel as if I've arrived at a much more authentic place within myself. But that takes time. It takes time and work and surrender, all that stuff.
And that's surrender. That's a big part of performance. I mean, the pictures from the 70s through the 80s and all that stuff. I look back at old photos of me and I'm like, oh, the fashion was very there. But that, that's part of it, right? That you have to package that professional presentation, right? No matter what's going on. And I won't give anything away from the book, but a lot was going on behind the scenes where you're getting up there on stage and smiling and singing with various people. And
Yeah.
what, how do you both go there and give the people what they paid to see and keep yourself over the decades and decades and decades of a lot happening while you were out on tours?
How do I keep myself or how do I hang on to that? Is
Yeah,
is
yeah,
is
yeah.
that the
Like,
question?
yeah, how do you separate performer you from that part of yourself that is you, that is your identity, not your performance, that is, real, for lack of a better term. Not saying the performance isn't real. Yeah.
Right. No, I understand. Well, we're human beings are very complex. We have a lot of different aspects to who we are. And, depending on your childhood experience, depending on where you grew up, your cultural background, ethnic background, I mean, there's so many pieces to the puzzle that make us who we are. And I think for anybody that's chosen a career, whether you're an actor, whether you're a model, whether you're a performer, whatever the case may be, when you are doing something performative,
Hmm.
there's a part of all of us that we learn to put on and out, right? And because we have to, that's our job, if that's your chosen career. So you find a way to bolster that part of you, even if you feel deep down that you are falling apart.
Hmm.
And there were many times, in my past, in my youth, where I was doing tours, and I felt so fragmented and fragile internally, but I still had to do my job,
Yeah, yeah.
and you figure out how to make it work, but it doesn't mean that it's always feeling good to do that,
That's what
right? And
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I said that's what I think a lot of people don't understand about performing, especially at the level you were at. It's your job to make it glamorous and amazing. It's not inherently glamorous and amazing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a job. And I do talk about that a little bit in my book, in that, when you're on a big tour like that, whether it's Pink Floyd, which was a year-long tour, um, you're on and off planes, you're in and out of hotels, you're living out of your suitcase.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're traveling and moving, and maybe for 2, 3 hours,
Yeah.
you're on stage doing the show. But what's happening, the rest of the 21 hours that of each day, and it's living like a gypsy, really, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very unsettled, it's very unstable, and you really have to find ways to keep yourself healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and it's a challenge. It's really a challenge. And I'm not here to say that I was successful at doing that all the time, because listen, I was touring with Pink Floyd in the 80s. It was a time of a lot of drugs and a
Yeah.
lot of alcohol and a lot of craziness. And that I was, young, and I got caught up in that in that time in my life and prior to that. Um, and you find ways to sort of kill the pain that you're feeling, whether it's you're homesick or whether you're really having an identity crisis. There's lots of different ways to kill the pain. And, I definitely, imbibed in those, ways of dulling and numbing out at the same time as I was participating in this, really gorgeous, glamorous, seemingly
Mm-hmm.
exterior
Yeah.
life. Looks like I had it all together, right? But
Even
not
if
true.
people, yeah, even if people have it all together, I mean, just the when you're expending that much energy and that much adrenaline is going at night, right? Cranking down, winding down to go to sleep. The body doesn't wanna, right?
No,
So that's
no.
where the substances really start. You're forcing your body to shut down. You're forcing your body to wake up after not enough sleep because my God, press tours on concerts are you're doing morning shows and then you're performing at night. There's no time for sleep, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a background singer, most of my career, so I wasn't necessarily the one doing interviews and things like that. It was the stars, but we were all of
Yeah.
us in the band were tagging along in
Yeah,
that
exactly.
schedule, and the whole thing with doing a show and then you're all wound up and all, just pumped up, because when you're singing in front of 50,000 people, that is an incredible rush, and with Pink Floyd, it was arenas and stadiums. So you're talking very, very big audiences. So, yeah, that's a lot of adrenaline. And then, as a group with all the people that you're working with, we're all feeling that sense of loneliness and all feeling that sense of challenge. So then we all huddle together at night after the show and drink and talk and hang out. And that was part of the lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I'm not condoning that as a way to
Of course not.
live,
Yeah. The book makes
certainly.
that clear. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's part of it, and it's a challenge. And I think it's different now with younger generations of performers. I get the sense that there isn't a lot of that going on. The sober culture is kind of a thing now, and hopefully young people are dealing with the challenges in different ways and healthier ways, I hope. But I know there's also still a lot of people out there in the business that are struggling with substance abuse and mental challenges, emotional challenges. It's part of the territory.
Hmm. I have one more question
Hmm.
about the tour. You're ahead of me on the loneliness. One more question, then we're going to go to break, all you listener.
Okay.
But the genre hopping as well that you did. I mean, you did jazz, you did pop, you did Pink Floyd. In terms of being you, going back to that idea of identity, was that I'm trying to think of the way to ask the question. Was that a unique difficulty? Because you talk about the reality of, not being white. Things have changed a lot since you started touring. Was the fact that, I mean, I saw Jazz Singer. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that. But was that, did you have conflict with that?
Um, in a way, yes,
Hmm.
because, and it kind of ties into, my whole personal story of not growing up, not really knowing where I fit in, because I'm not full Japanese, I'm not completely white, I'm this mixed cultural bag of a being, and so I really struggled with my personal identity. And then as my career evolved, singing with George Benson to Pink Floyd, that's a completely different musical experience and requires different skills and a different way of being. And I did it, I could do it, but what that did ultimately for me personally was, therefore it was difficult to find myself as an artist.
Right, right.
So
So,
that became the challenge. Yes.
yeah. Have you found that's gotten easier as we're embracing more like no, people don't have to stay in their lane in terms of music, or is it just differently difficult?
Well, I think it's interesting. After I toured with Sting, I ended up getting a couple of record deals,
Mhm.
small record deals that I did all original music. It was all very Brazilian influenced. I love that music. And so that just kind of, it's what happened. It's what came out creatively for me at that time. Um, do I identify myself as a Brazilian jazz artist? No, but that's sort of what came out at that moment. And so, and then my life took a whole different turn, which we can talk about. But I think I'm still on the path of kind of figuring out who I am musically. And it's interesting. Now that I've written this book, I found another creative path which I didn't plan on. So writing has become a new interest of mine in with just words, without the music. So that's a whole other thing. So I think what's fun for me now at this point in my life is um, I'm still discovering things and new things and new experiences and it's fun and it's exciting and um, I want to be someone that ages gracefully. I hope to age gracefully, and I hope to age in a way that I never stop being curious and never stop creating and never stop being vibrant and involved and interested. I think we should all keep going until the day we keel over. Right?
Right, right.
Uh,
Okay, Machan, hang on because I want to go to break. Come up, talk about loneliness, some of the stuff you talk about in the latter chapters of the book. And again, people
okay.
listening, I cannot stress enough. This is Machan's first book, Naked Out Loud, from Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond. But you wouldn't know the use of language in this book. I can't say enough. Just blew me away. It is a good read
Jen.
as well as a very, very interesting just mix of stuff. And we are going to come back and talk about loneliness and dogs. after the break on It's Not Therapy. Questions, comments, any feedback whatsoever, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is my handle on all social media. Talking to Machan Taylor about her book, Naked Out Loud, From Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond, talking about identity, performance, and the creative industry when we come back on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking to the wonderful, the brilliant, the dynamic Machan Taylor about her book, Naked Out Loud, From Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond. And before the break, I teased this was a chapter of the book that just hit me because I'm a pet person, Machan. Like there's a chapter where it's almost like a country song, like I lost my dog and then I lost my mom. But yeah, but
I love it.
Yeah, but I mean it was a really, really rough time, but for you, and you didn't unpack that the way you do some of the obviously it's probably still pretty painful, but when you're on tour, people in entertainment, they love their pets, especially their dogs, right? Because it's been explained to me that when, this is people who live in LA, when you're there, everybody wants something from you except your dog, right? Was that something you found?
Oh, I've just always been a dog person. I had dogs when I was a kid, and there were many, many years I couldn't have a dog because I was on tour. I was traveling. I wasn't married at the time, and nobody to take care of it. So there were a lot of years I really missed having a dog. Like right now, I miss having a dog. But as you know, dogs require a lot of care and a lot of attention. And right now, my life is a little crazy because I'm back and forth from upstate New York to New York City every week because during the school year, I teach at NYU now. And and my husband is a musician and he travels a lot. So it's really difficult to, to have a dog at the moment. But I'm going to get another one someday for sure.
And I mean, again, in very few words, you talked about the fact, 16-year-old doggy, blind, deaf, all that stuff, a lot of care. And then you went through it again with your mom, right? And I think a lot of people out there who have been through the carer, I mean, that's another piece of identity completely, right?
Yes.
It's not glamorous, but that's life. Like that's real life. Right.
It's real life and we're all going to have to deal with it. My dad died when I was in my 20s. I was on tour. That's also a little story in the book. So he was 66 years old when he passed. So there was a long period of time where my mom was, doing well, and she lived to be almost 94. So that was a lot of time for her to be alone. But I mean, luckily my mother did have a good long run. But you're never prepared. You're never prepared for it, no matter how old your parent is. And no matter how well or not well a condition they were in. Luckily, my mother did not have a prolonged disease or some, illness. She went pretty quickly, it was a matter of a few months, but it's weird. It's a weird feeling that when she passed, I talk about this in the book, I felt like an orphan all of a sudden. And it's just the weirdest feeling that you cannot explain, that I'm sure everybody
it's very common.
feels.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
So,
and you deal in the book with, past generations and mental illness and it not being the same for us
Right.
as well, which again, like you managed to cram so much in. Can you unpack that a bit with that kind of intergenerational kind of respecting the past as well as sort of a different partial culture, but having your own space and your own truth, but then respecting the older generation and the way they do things. There's no right or wrong, right? In some ways it's just different.
Um, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but I opened the book talking
Mm-hmm.
about the concept of in Japanese culture of saving face,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in Japanese culture, traditional Japanese culture, it's almost shameful to talk about very personal, emotional kinds of things. And whether it's yourself or whether it's someone else, it's almost seen as disrespectful. But I felt that it was important for me to kind of break the chains with that part of my cultural influence and identity and what I learned from my mother about saving face.
Mm-hmm.
For me it was important to break that down and to strip that away and to in order to really connect with what I feel is a sense of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
um, I had to break away from that. And so therefore, there may be some Japanese people that if they end up reading my book may find it embarrassing or
Mm-hmm.
terrible that I have revealed all these things about myself. But I feel that it's the healthiest thing that I could have done for myself. And I also believe that it's what's really needed in this world more and more is
Mm-hmm.
people being willing to be more vulnerable, being more emotional and compassionate, and willing to show our underbelly dark side in order to really find a way to connect more with our human selves, with our real selves. And that I see that as something that needs to happen on every level of society, up to people in government,
Mm-hmm.
which right now we won't get into it. But in America, as you know, it's a very challenging time. But can you imagine if people in political power actually had a deep sense of humanity and accountability and compassion for everyone, right?
It's see this is what I love about your story in Naked Out Loud. The way you go, no, there are some things I do, want to do modern, but then you get into these wonderful discussions of like Buddhist noble truths as well. And the way you was this I get the sense it was kind of organic, just your experiences took you different places. But when you
Yeah.
sit down and go, what do I believe? How do you square this? I mean, there's wonderful wisdom in Buddhism and those really, really old belief traditions. But then you're clearly an extremely modern woman, too. How do you decide this is what I'm going to keep? This is what I'm going to let stay in the past?
Yeah, well, I had to, I was raised Catholic, but my mother was a Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was raised Shinto Buddhist. So even though my mother had to convert to Catholicism to marry my father, my mother still retained a lot of her Buddhist beliefs and talked about that with me. And so therefore, even though I was going to Catholic school as a young person, I believed in reincarnation, which totally doesn't sync up with Catholicism, right? So I always had this sort of dual
Mm-hmm.
sense of spirituality growing up. And it was, again, it was like part of my whole experience of being, biracial, multiracial, multi everything. It was sort of
Mm-hmm.
part of my upbringing. So I think as an adult, I started to investigate, through the years, different Eastern religions and different, Hindu, Buddhism, all kinds of spiritual practices. I've been a yogi, I practice yoga, and have for a long time. And, at a certain point in your life, you kind of arrive at a place where you feel comfortable. And for me, organized religion, for me personally, doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but a spiritual practice and a spiritual sense of belief is what works for me. So, Buddhism, if a lot of people don't know, there is no God in Buddhism. So it's very different from, Catholicism, where you have a man or
Mm-hmm.
a god, or in a Muslim religion where you have Allah, or
Mm-hmm.
these monotheistic practices. So that's why Buddhism works for me, because it's not about a praying to a god. It's about finding God within yourself and
Right.
God within everyone else and everything else, including nature, because Shinto Buddhism is all about nature.
Mm-hmm. It's
That's
amazing how in modern Japan it kind of sits side by side with the more modern traditions as well. It sort of just nobody talks about the disconnect too much, right? It's that
right,
face
right.
again. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So people have got to be, this lady's too accomplished, has lived too much. I can't possibly even, how did you finally find that sense of comfort? How did you learn to feel comfortable? Because, obviously you've been through a lot and touring is so um disruptive. How did you find that sense of I'm good now here?
I don't know that I've arrived at that,
Okay.
Leon.
Okay.
No, I definitely, at this point in my life, I feel a lot more comfortable within myself and in this body and in this skin. And um, yeah, there's definitely a greater sense of peace
Mhm.
that I have. But, I don't think the personal evolution of oneself ever stops. And I hope it doesn't stop. Like I said before, I want to stay curious and I want to stay interested and keep learning.
Mhm.
So I think it's dangerous if we get to a point where we feel like, oh, well, I know everything and I don't need to know anymore. You
Right.
know,
Right.
so yeah, I'm definitely in a much better place now
Yeah.
in myself, but there's more. There's more to come,
Yeah. That
you
I mean
know.
that's possibly the most being comfortable with not being totally comfortable is sort of that skill, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know the work of Pema Chodron?
That's you mentioned that stuff in the book, right? Near the end?
I may have mentioned
Mhm.
Pema. She is so amazing. She is an American um, priest, basically.
Mhm.
She in the shambhalic Tibetan shambhalic Buddhist
Mhm.
practice
Mhm.
lineage. She's part of that lineage, and she has a lot of really wonderful books. And she talks about, one of the things she talks about a lot is learning to be comfortable with discomfort,
Right.
because we may think we have things in control. We may think we know how, okay, well, I have my day planned and I'm going to do this, 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 and this. But we never know what life is going to bring around the corner. And something could happen that could completely change the trajectory of your life in a second, right? So we don't really know. We don't really have total control over our destinies. And so I always think of Pema Chodron and go to her for her wisdom. And yeah, so much of life is really, I think, learning to find that comfort zone with being uncomfortable.
Right. That's the Buddhist concept of pain is not suffering. Suffering you can choose not to do, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah. It's tricky. It's tricky though.
It is, especially we didn't even get into being an older woman in the media. I mean, there's that whole, but that could be another book that you do, Sean. There's so much in this one. Congratulations on Naked Out Loud, from Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond. If people are wondering, yes, there are pictures of doggies in the book. Luna is very cute. But if somebody takes away one thing from this memoir, Machan, what would you like it to be?
I would like for people to walk away with the feeling that there is no shame in telling the truth about how you feel, what you've been through, and who you are. No matter where you are in your journey, because your journey is going to take on a lot of different paths, within your life journey. But there is no shame in telling the truth.
Nice. Machan Taylor. Again, I can't say it enough because I really enjoyed this. Naked Out Loud, from Yokohama to Pink Floyd and Beyond. If you're not really big on dry self-help, that's for some people, but this is a story. This is a life. You've done enough living for 5 people, Machan. It's so cool. Congratulations. And thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us your story and your honesty.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great. Thanks.
Questions, comments, any feedback, Liana at nottherapyshow.com or at nottherapyshow on social media. I have been trying to be more active lately. It has been an experience. Oh, Lord. Anyway, back after this with final thoughts. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about identity, the beauty, and the mess. And if you're tuning in on the radio and you missed the interview with Machan Taylor, please look up the podcast version. You won't regret it. I love having people on the show. I love talking to therapists. I do. I think it's very important that we lower the barriers to seeking therapy. It's an important piece of the puzzle. I also think that elements like art and music and people just sharing their stories about, their moms and their doggies, that's another major piece that has gotten lost in the, I will take a big swing and call it pathologized identity element of mental health. We get bogged down in mental health language when it comes to identity. The term personality disorder is something of a misnomer because when we think about personality, lay people tend to think, oh, they're friendly, they're outgoing, they're pessimistic, and that has nothing to do with personality disorders. There are a lot of different theories of personality, and the language we use to talk about this stuff is somewhat restricted by needing standards for medical diagnosis. So literally different clinicians and different, medical professionals can talk to each other and have a common set of linguistic tools. But when it comes to talking to each other about who we are and, very important, what we need to thrive, that can get in the way. These very broad definitions, the spectrums, what it means to have PTSD, for instance, is not the same for any two people. And unfortunately, people think they can Google an article and read up about a condition and go, oh, now I understand having bipolar disorder. There are two types of bipolar disorder. Just to start, PTSD, there's PTSD, and then there's complex PTSD, CPTSD, which isn't even a recognized formal condition in North America right now. In parts of Europe, it is. So you see where we're getting? And then autism. Oh my God, people who read about autism and think they know what it is. It is radically different from person to person. And there is a time where a diagnosis feels like a brand. And I was reminded again recently online how touchy people are about this stuff and they try to gatekeep who gets to use certain words. And none of this is really productive. We only have so much control over things. And that is an important piece of what I call going good crazy. Artists are the experts on going good crazy. They make mistakes. They make a mess. They do things that are not necessarily healthy. And not all of them come out the other side. We lose people far too soon, but the ones that do have a lot to teach us. And I think that the Buddhist traditions and some of Eastern philosophy that's been very, very, very co-opted by the self-help and New Age spaces do have a lot to teach. But it's very individualized. It's not the outcomes. It's not the answers. It's the struggle. It's the intents and the effort that really make meaning. You're allowed to set who you are for yourself, even if the rest of the world doesn't agree. Questions, comments, any feedback, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. At nottherapyshow is my social media contact. I am out of time. Your crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. Go make a mess. See you next time.